My name is Lucas Harrington, and I'm 39 years old. I'm an architect living in Chicago, teaching part-time architectural design at an art and design college in the city. I've spent my entire career designing structures that are meant to last, stable, balanced, and enduring. What I failed to see was that my own life, the marriage I believed was as strong as concrete, was built on sand. If you had asked me 3 years ago whether I was happy, I would have said yes. I had a steady career, a smart and vibrant wife, and a warm loft apartment in the West Loop. Everything seemed perfect until small cracks began to appear, silent and almost invisible, like hairline fractures only an architect would notice. I've always been the calm type. I don't raise my voice. I don't fight. I believe patience and logic can solve anything, in design and in marriage. And that was my first mistake. I thought calmness was strength. But to Sienna, my wife, it must have looked like weakness. She used to say she loved how I never lost my temper, how I made her feel safe. Later, I learned that safe only meant easy to control. I once believed our marriage was built on trust. I was wrong. It was a beautifully staged structure, polished on the outside, hollow within. I'm not telling this story to seek sympathy, nor to paint myself as a victim. I'm telling it because it's a story of quiet revenge, of how a man underestimated and dismissed found a way to fight back, not through anger, but through precision, patience, and justice. I met Sienna Blake in the fall of 2015 when we were both graduate students in architecture at the Chicago Institute of the Arts. She was the kind of person who could walk into a room and draw every gaze toward her, not just because she was beautiful, with dark brown hair and that sharp, confident smile, but because of her energy. Ambitious, assertive, magnetic. I was the opposite, quiet, analytical, comfortable observing rather than speaking. Maybe that contrast was what caught her attention. At first, we were just two classmates pulling all-nighters in the studio. She brewed the coffee, I fine-tuned the renderings. Those nights turned into long conversations about architecture, about design philosophy, about the future. She dreamed of running her own creative agency one day. I dreamed of designing buildings that would stand for centuries. Different goals, but I believed they could exist side by side. We got married in 2018. It was a small ceremony, no luxury, no spectacle, just a few close friends and family, and the shared conviction that what we were building was something stronger than any structure I'd ever design. In 2019, I used part of my grandfather's inheritance, about $100,000, as a down payment on a modest loft in Chicago's West Loop. It wasn't large, but it was filled with light, with exposed brick walls and tall windows overlooking the river. I remember the first time we stepped inside. Sienna smiled and said, "This place feels like us." And back then, I believed her. The first few years of our marriage were calm, comfortable. I worked at an architecture firm and taught part-time at an art college. She freelanced as a marketing consultant, managing brands and social media campaigns. We cooked dinner together, made travel plans, talked about our dreams. Sometimes she'd sit beside me at night, typing captions for her clients while I drafted steel structures on tracing paper. She'd laugh and tell me I was brilliant but hopelessly idealistic. I laughed with her, not realizing that one day that idealism would cost me everything. Looking back, I see the signs that I missed, small, almost imperceptible shifts. But at the time, I believed that love, patience, and communication could fix anything, that any design flaw could be corrected if you caught it soon enough. What I didn't understand was that some structures are doomed to collapse, no matter how many times you try to reinforce them. In the early years, our life moved with quiet precision, like a blueprint already completed. Everything seemed orderly, rhythmic, predictable. Each morning I went to the architecture firm. In the evenings I taught at the college. Sienna worked from home, spending hours editing photos and building marketing strategies for her clients. We still had dinner together, still talked, still watched movies before bed. From the outside, our marriage looked stable, perhaps even ideal. But by early 2024, that rhythm began to shift, subtly at first, almost unnoticeably. Sienna said she needed space to create and started attending branding retreats, creative conferences, and women's empowerment trips. At first, I saw nothing wrong with it. She was ambitious, and I respected that. I wanted her to feel supported, free. But over the months, those trips became more frequent, longer, and stranger. She came home with designer handbags, fine jewelry, and clothes that clearly didn't match her freelance income. I asked softly, "New clients?" She smiled and shrugged. "Yeah, just bigger contracts. Don't worry about it." I nodded. I wanted to believe her. I wasn't the kind of man who pried. I believed trust meant giving space, not questions. But somewhere deep inside, something began to stir. A quiet, uneasy sound, like the faint crack in concrete only an architect would notice. Other changes followed. She spent more time on her phone, spoke less during dinner. Her perfume changed, no longer the scent I'd known for years. She bought a new suitcase, said it was for work, but I never saw her carry any camera gear or presentation materials. One evening, while reviewing blueprints, I noticed a receipt from a jewelry store in Miami on her desk. She said it was a client gift. I folded the receipt, put it away, and went back to my drawings. If I regret one thing, it's my silence. I thought restraint was wisdom, that if I stayed calm, things would eventually right themselves. What I didn't know was that silence can sometimes be the invitation that tragedy needs to walk in. My building stood strong, but my marriage, the one structure I believed was unshakable, had already begun to rot from the inside, quietly but relentlessly. After Sienna's frequent trips, I started paying attention to the numbers. I've always been meticulous with finances, not out of stinginess, but out of discipline. I liked order, every bill, every transaction recorded neatly like the lines on a blueprint, precise and balanced. But suddenly, the numbers stopped adding up. It started small, 50 here, 100 there, cash withdrawals from our joint account. Insignificant on their own, but when I reviewed the statements, they formed a pattern. Consistent, deliberate, almost rhythmic. Then there were charges that didn't fit. Restaurants, flights, hotels. In the same city she said she attended her creative retreats. One night I asked gently, "Did you use the joint card for work expenses?" Sienna snapped, "Are you micromanaging me now, Lucas? I have a right to use our money, too. You're not the only one contributing." Her tone hit me harder than the words. I could have argued, demanded answers, but I didn't. Instead, I said, "That's not what I meant. I just wanted to make sure everything's clear." She turned away, ended the conversation, and as always, I let it end there. I told myself silence kept the peace, that stepping back was wiser than confrontation. But what I didn't see was that every time I stayed silent, I surrendered a little more of my ground. The withdrawals continued. The smiles remained sweet. And me, the man who believed patience was strength, was quietly becoming the architect of his own collapse. It happened on a humid July evening in 2025. The air in Chicago was thick and unmoving. I was in my study, adjusting the layout of a design project due the following week. A half-empty cup of coffee sat beside my sketchbook. The ceiling fan hummed softly above me. From the kitchen came the faint clatter of dishes. Sienna setting the table in silence. No music, no words, just a stillness that pressed against the walls. During dinner, she barely ate. Her eyes flicked to her phone again and again, the light from the screen reflecting off her tense expression. I thought about asking what was wrong, but habit won. Silence instead of questions. When I stood to clear the table, she spoke, her tone calm but deliberate. "Lucas, we need to talk." I turned toward her. She wasn't looking at me. Her eyes were fixed somewhere behind me, on the wall, as if rehearsing her lines. "Do you have a moment?" "Sure," I said. "What's going on?" She took a deep breath, and somehow I knew whatever came next would change everything. "I want a divorce." 4 words, flat, emotionless, practiced. I said nothing. 1,000 thoughts raced through my head, but none of them reached my mouth. Finally, I managed, "Can we at least talk about why? What brought you to this?" She shook her head. "There's nothing to talk about. I've already spoken to a lawyer." That line stayed with me. I've already spoken to a lawyer. It wasn't a conversation. It was a notification, a decision already drafted and filed. "What kind of arrangements are you thinking?" I asked quietly. That was when her expression shifted, no longer distant, but sharply calculated. "I'm keeping the loft, I've contributed to it, and I need stability after the divorce." "I want 70% of our savings." "And you'll provide spousal support for 4 years." I blinked. 4 years? "My attorney says it's reasonable. You make more than I do. I gave up career opportunities to support you." Each demand landed like a slow, deliberate blow. But the worst one came with a smile. The same smile that once warmed me now felt like ice. "You're an architect, Lucas. You don't have the money for a good lawyer. You can't fight me." I looked at her, still silent, not angry, not broken, just processing the contempt in her voice. She didn't just want to leave. She wanted to prove that I was powerless. When I finally spoke, my voice was steady. "I understand. I'll need time to think." She nodded, almost relieved, as if a business deal had just concluded. "Take your time, but I think it's already decided." That night, as she slept beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The room felt foreign, cold, stripped of meaning. She was right about one thing. I didn't have the money for an expensive lawyer, but she was wrong about something far more important. I wasn't out of options. She had forgotten that in the Harrington family, there's one man in Chicago no one wants to face in court. Alex Harrington, my older brother. And that night, I decided, if Sienna wanted a war, I would show her what a perfectly designed war looks like. That night, long after Sienna had fallen asleep, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The amber glow from the streetlights cast narrow bands of light across the exposed brick wall, the same wall I once painted myself, believing it would be the backdrop of something lasting. Now it felt like part of an empty frame. I thought for hours. She was right. I didn't have the money for a high-end attorney. This loft, our savings, even my future could vanish in a single, uneven fight. But as I closed my eyes, another face surfaced in my mind. Alex, my brother. Alex Harrington, 4 years older, sharper, harder, and far more feared than anyone I'd ever known. He was a top corporate attorney in Chicago, the kind of man CEOs called when they needed to win at any cost. We hadn't spoken in 9 years, not since our father's funeral. In grief and pride, we tore into each other that day. He told me I was wasting my potential, that teaching and designing for others was a form of hiding. I told him he'd sold his soul for power. We both walked away, carrying our own versions of righteousness, and never looked back. But tonight, in the silence of this empty home, I realized something. Pride doesn't win battles. If I wanted my life back, I had to let it go. I turned on my laptop and typed his name. The first result, Harrington and Cole Associates, downtown Chicago. His reputation was exactly as I remembered, relentless, precise, merciless. He was everything Sienna would never expect me to have on my side. I stared at the screen for a long time, fingers hovering over the keyboard, caught between history and necessity. 9 years of silence isn't easy to break. But then I heard Sienna's voice echoing in my mind. "You can't fight me." That sentence cut deeper than any wound. Pride doesn't win battles. If I wanted my life back, I had to let it go. I opened my phone, scrolled through old contacts until I found his number, the one I'd never deleted. For the first time in nearly a decade, I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to beg for help. I was going to start fighting the right way. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the wide glass panes. Sienna left early, saying she had a meeting with a client. I only nodded, watching her walk out like a stranger I used to know. The moment the door closed, I opened my laptop and logged into our joint bank account. If there was anything left I could still trust, it was numbers. They don't lie. I printed every bank statement from the past 18 months. Each line item looked like a misplaced line on a flawed blueprint, and I was determined to trace every detail. At first, I only saw a few cash withdrawals, but once I grouped transactions by date, location, and category, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. Cash withdrawals under $1,000, consistent, spaced 2 to 3 weeks apart. Hotel charges in Miami, Austin, Scottsdale, dates that matched perfectly with her so-called creative retreats. Dinner receipts from high-end restaurants, meals clearly for two. I sat there for a long moment, exhaling slowly. It was no longer suspicion, it was a deliberate pattern, a system executed with precision, the same kind of strategy she once used for her marketing clients. I needed confirmation, so I called Jordan Lee, my longtime friend and a certified public accountant, CPA. He'd handled my taxes for years, sharp, discreet, brutally honest. "Lucas, you sound tense. What's going on?" "Jordan, I need you to look at some financial records, unofficially, just between us." "All right. What kind of records?" "Sienna wants a divorce, and I think something's wrong with the money." That afternoon, he came by. We sat in my study surrounded by piles of bank statements, credit card bills, and receipts. He skimmed through them, eyes narrowing. "Lucas, this isn't normal spending. I'm seeing a structured withdrawal pattern just under the alert threshold every time. And looks like nearly $45,000 have been drained over the last 18 months. I stared at him, silent. $45,000, almost half of what I thought we still had. "If I had to guess," Jordan continued, "she's funding someone else using your joint account. I've seen this pattern before. Marital asset diversion. It's textbook." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the numbers like I was staring at a collapsing structure. This wasn't doubt anymore. It was planned betrayal, executed with care. That night, I pulled up the website for Harrington & Cole Associates, staring at the photo of the man I hadn't spoken to in nearly a decade. My brother. Maybe it was time to make the real call. If Sienna thought I had no fight left in me, she was about to learn just how precise an architect can be when he starts designing a war. I stayed in my study until nightfall, the light from my monitor flickering across stacks of papers. Sienna still hadn't come home, and for the first time I realized I didn't care where she was. In front of me lay everything, the statements, the hotel invoices, the credit card charges, a full blueprint of systematic betrayal. And there was only one person capable of turning that evidence into a weapon. Alex. I stared at my phone for nearly half an hour. 9 years of silence. 9 years without a single word. The last time we spoke was at our father's funeral. We were both hurting, but instead of mourning together, we chose to attack each other. I can still hear his voice that day. "You're too soft, Lucas. You've got talent, but no backbone to survive the real world." And I'd shot back, "At least I didn't sell my soul for it." After that, we stopped being brothers. We were just two men sharing a name and nothing else. I scrolled through my contacts until I found his number. It was still there. I had never deleted it, though I'd thought about it many times. I took a breath and pressed call. 3 rings. Alex Harrington. The same voice, low, confident, and cold. Alex, it's me, Lucas. Silence for a few seconds, just the faint sound of him breathing. 9 years. Yeah. What's going on? I swallowed. Sienna. She wants a divorce. She's already hired a lawyer, and I think there are some financial irregularities. He didn't respond immediately. Then his tone shifted, measured, controlled. Are you sure? I am. I've got records. Jordan looked them over. Another pause. Then, send me everything you have. I'll take a look. No promises yet. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank me when we win. The call ended. I sat there, staring at the phone, uncertain whether I felt relief or fear. But one thing was clear. For the first time in years, I wasn't alone anymore. 3 days after that call, I received an email from Alex. The subject line was short and direct. Send everything. I'll review this weekend. I gathered everything, the bank statements, hotel invoices, and the spreadsheet Jordan had organized, and sent it all through an encrypted folder. A few hours later, he replied, There's something here. Don't say a word to her. I'll be in touch. 3 days after that, my phone rang. Lucas, I'm taking the case. Really? I said no promises, but there's enough here to suggest this isn't just a divorce, it's something bigger. I'll need someone on the ground. That someone was Robert Tillman, a former Chicago PD detective, now working as a private investigator specializing in financial and marital fraud. Rob met me at my office on Tuesday morning, solid build, weathered face, the kind of man who had seen everything. He shook my hand firmly. I'll need all your records, hard and digital copies, and any details about your wife's travel or daily habits. You think she's hiding something? I don't think, Lucas. I know. People don't change spending patterns without a reason. Usually, that reason has a name. For the next 2 weeks, Rob tracked Sienna's movements. He used travel data, surveillance footage, even airline loyalty logs. Meanwhile, I spent my nights organizing evidence like blueprints. Every transaction, every withdrawal, every missing dollar aligned in neat precision. Alex, on the other hand, was already shaping a legal strategy. He said over the phone, We're not just proving she took money. We're proving she planned it while still married. That makes it financial fraud, not property division. He wasn't just protecting me. He was aiming to dismantle her entire narrative, piece by piece. Late one night, nearly 3 weeks into the investigation, Rob called. Lucas, I think I've got what you need. What is it? A man named Carter Reeves, real estate developer, travels to the same cities as your wife's creative retreats. I've got photos, hotel receipts, surveillance footage. I stared at the screen, heart pounding but voice steady. You're certain? Positive. They've been seeing each other for over a year. The dates line up perfectly. I didn't feel rage or heartbreak, just a deep, chilling stillness, the kind that settles in when you realize the foundation you built your life on has already crumbled beneath you. The next morning, Alex called again. We've got Carter Reeves. That's all we need. Now we wait. Let her make the next move. Let her think she's in control. What's the plan? When she files, we'll respond with a case she never saw coming. His voice was calm, methodical. And in that moment, I understood. The game had begun. And this time, the blueprint was mine. On a Thursday morning in late July 2025, the first hearing was scheduled at the Chicago Family Court. Sienna had filed the divorce petition a week earlier, demanding what she called a fair division, the loft, 70% of our savings, and 4 years of spousal support. Her lawyer, Richard Klein, was infamous for draining opponents financially before they even had a chance to fight. She believed I would appear alone, intimidated, and ready to surrender. She had no idea that within the first 10 minutes her entire plan would collapse. I arrived 30 minutes early. The sky was gray, the courthouse steps cold beneath my shoes. I wore my navy suit, the same one I'd worn defending my first design thesis. Modest but sharp. Down the hallway, I saw Sienna with Klein. She looked like she was walking into a board meeting worth millions. White suit, heels, hair tied back, exuding power and confidence. When I approached, she smiled faintly. "Lucas, I'm glad you came. Let's just keep things civilized, okay?" Her tone was sweet, but the victory was already in her eyes. I nodded. "Civilized? That's exactly what I want." Klein extended his hand. "Mr. Harrington, I'm Richard Klein. I represent your wife. I understand you're without counsel?" I checked my watch. "My attorney should be here any minute." They froze. Sienna's smile faltered. "Attorney, Lucas, you don't have to." A deep, calm voice echoed down the hallway. "Apologies, Michigan Avenue traffic was impossible." They turned. Alex Harrington walked toward us, charcoal gray suit, black tie, composed and commanding. He glanced at me, nodding once, a silent cue that said, "It's time." Klein's expression changed instantly. "Mr. Harrington, you're representing this case?" "Correct." "Lucas Harrington, your brother?" "Also correct." Alex's smile was polite, surgical. The hallway fell silent. Whispers spread quickly. In Chicago's legal circles, Alex Harrington wasn't just respected, he was feared. We entered the courtroom. Judge Eleanor Marks, known for her precision and impatience for theatrics, presided. "We're here for Sienna Blake Harrington versus Lucas Harrington," she began. "The petitioner requests division of assets and spousal support. Does the respondent have a counter?" Alex rose, every movement calculated. "Yes, Your Honor. We're filing a counterclaim for marital financial fraud, misuse of joint funds to support a year-long extramarital relationship." The silence that followed was absolute. Sienna turned pale. Klein stood abruptly. "Objection! These claims are baseless!" Alex didn't flinch. "Documentation has been provided to the court. Bank records, receipts, photographs, and a sworn statement from our investigator." Judge Marks flipped through the thick file Alex handed her, eyes narrowing. "Ms. Blake, do these transactions exist?" Klein whispered rapidly, but Sienna said nothing. Alex took one step forward. "We're requesting a full financial audit, reimbursement of the diverted funds, and an immediate freeze on marital assets pending review." The judge nodded. Request granted. Sienna collapsed slightly into her chair. Klein's face reddened with humiliation. I sat still, no satisfaction, no gloating, just silence. As we walked out, Alex leaned close enough for only me to hear. "You see, Lucas? She mistook your calm for weakness. All you needed was someone to prove otherwise." I met his eyes and said quietly, "Thank you." He smiled faintly. "Don't thank me. This is just the beginning." And he was right. It was only the opening move in a perfectly engineered revenge. After the hearing, the court ordered a comprehensive financial audit covering the past 2 years. I thought I was ready for anything, but what the report revealed was far beyond what I'd imagined. Alex received the file first. We met in his office, 29th floor, glass walls overlooking the Chicago River. It was clean, sharp, calculated, a space where emotion didn't belong. He handed me a thick folder. "Focus on the red markers," he said, "and brace yourself." Inside was every detail of the past 18 months. Regular cash withdrawals under $1,000, totaling $64,700. A secret credit card account under her maiden name, Sienna Blake, used for luxury purchases. And worst of all, a home equity loan of $30,000, signed under a forged version of my signature. I froze on that page. The signature was flawless, Too perfect. But I knew my own handwriting, and this wasn't mine. She forged my name? Alex nodded. That's right, and that's a felony, Lucas. If we press charges, she could face fraud and forgery indictments. I stared at the desk, numb, no anger left, only a clean, empty stillness. All I could think was, she planned every step, but Alex wasn't done. He opened his laptop and played a series of messages collected by Rob Tillman, our investigator. They were between Sienna and Carter Reeves, short, affectionate exchanges mixed with logistical and financial plans. In one of them, Carter wrote, "Once the divorce settles, we'll have enough for the down payment in San Diego." Her reply, "Don't worry, baby. Everything's under control. He doesn't stand a chance." Alex closed the laptop gently. His tone was calm, precise. "That's proof of intentional asset diversion, and this," he tapped the folder, "is how we use it." I sat back. Part of me still couldn't believe that the woman who once fell asleep on my shoulder had engineered this. But another part of me, the architect, the analyst, began to replace pain with precision. "So what's next?" I asked. "She thinks this is a fight over money," Alex said. "We'll make it a fight over character. Once the court sees what she's done, she won't just lose the condo, she'll lose credibility. Everything she thought was power will become evidence." I looked at him. My brother, the man I hadn't spoken to in nearly a decade. Now he sat across from me, calm, unwavering, as if we'd never been estranged. "Alex," I said quietly, "thank you for doing this." He smiled faintly. "Thank me when it's over. Then we'll talk about dinner. For now, focus." That night I stood alone in the loft, surrounded by the echoes of what used to be home. Every wall, every reflection seemed to hold a trace of deceit. But I didn't feel pain anymore, only a solid kind of silence, the silence of a man who knows the final design is already shifting in his favor. On a Monday morning in early September 2025, the final hearing convened at the Chicago Family Court. The sky was unusually clear, but the air inside the courtroom was heavy, thick with 3 months of tension. I arrived early. Alex was already there, calmly organizing files with his assistant. He wore a charcoal gray suit, the same one from the first hearing. Only this time he wasn't the brother I avoided. He was my ally. Sienna entered a few minutes later with a new attorney, young, nervous, clearly unprepared. After Richard Klein had withdrawn, no established firm in the city would touch her case. She looked drained, thinner, paler, eyes ringed with fatigue. The confidence she once wore like armor was gone, replaced by desperation. Judge Eleanor Marks took her seat and struck the gavel. This is the continuation of the divorce proceedings between Sienna Blake Harrington and Lucas Harrington. The petitioner has changed representation. The respondent remains represented by Alex Harrington. Alex rose, his tone calm but commanding. "Your Honor, we present the results of the court-ordered financial audit, along with supplementary evidence from an independent investigation conducted by Detective Robert Tillman." He set a thick file on the table. Its cover label read, Exhibit 4A, Fraud and Forgery. According to the audit, Alex said, Ms. Sienna Blake Harrington withdrew a total of $64,700 from the joint account without disclosure. She also opened a secret credit card under her maiden name and forged my client's signature on a $30,000 home equity loan. The courtroom fell silent. Her lawyer stumbled to his feet. "Objection! These allegations haven't been—" Alex cut him off smoothly. "The audit was independently verified, counsel, and there's more." He gestured toward the clerk, who projected a series of text messages onto the screen. Between Sienna and Carter Reeves, explicit, indisputable. In these exchanges, Alex said, Ms. Harrington discusses using marital assets to support her extramarital partner. This constitutes intentional financial fraud during marriage. Judge Marks skimmed the files, her expression hardening. "Ms. Blake," she asked, "is this your signature on the loan application?" Sienna didn't answer. Her attorney whispered something urgently, but she only shook her head, tears beginning to form. Alex delivered the final blow with surgical calm. "Your Honor, my client will not pursue criminal charges. He asks only for full reimbursement of the misappropriated funds and the dissolution of this marriage, with his dignity intact." The silence was thick enough to feel. Then the judge spoke. "The court hereby denies all financial requests from the petitioner. Ms. Sienna Blake Harrington is ordered to repay $64,700 plus the $30,000 loan and cover all legal fees for the respondent. Case closed." The gavel struck once. Sharp, final. Sienna collapsed into her seat, face buried in her hands. The room held its breath. Alex gathered the documents, looked at me, and said quietly, "It's done. You're free." I met his eyes. "No, we're free." We stepped outside into the sunlight, bright and cold across the courthouse steps. Behind us, Sienna remained seated, still, hollow, a figure of ruin. I turned once more, not with hatred, not even sadness, just the quiet satisfaction of a perfectly executed ending, the final line in a design built to last. 3 weeks after the final hearing, the old loft was officially sold. I used my share of the proceeds to buy a smaller apartment in Lincoln Park, not large, but filled with light, quiet enough to hear the wind move through the windows. No more exposed brick walls, no echoes of old memories. Everything here was mine, clean, clear, and honest. Sienna left Chicago soon after. Alex said she'd moved to San Diego, where Carter Reeves used to live, but no one knew if they were still together. I didn't care anymore. Some structures, once they collapse, are never meant to be rebuilt. Alex and I started meeting every weekend. At first, just coffee, then dinner. Eventually, laughter returned, slow, genuine, like something rediscovered rather than created. One evening, he said, "You know, Lucas, when Dad died, I thought I lost the last of my family. Turns out, you just rebuilt it." I smiled. He was right. What I regained wasn't just freedom. It was a brother I thought I'd lost forever. I went back to teaching, guiding architecture students again. But now, my lectures carried a different weight. When I spoke about foundations, I often added, "Any structure can fail if it's built on misplaced trust. But if you learn to read the cracks, you'll know when it's time to start again." My students never fully understood what I meant, but I did. Every fracture in my life, love, marriage, pride, had taught me how to read the fault lines. One evening, over dinner, Alex raised his glass. "To new designs," I smiled. Not every structure deserves to stand, but every collapse teaches us how to build better. The city lights glimmered across the restaurant's glass wall, reflecting two brothers, one who'd lost, one who'd returned, both finally at peace. I don't think about Sienna anymore. She's just the closing page of a flawed chapter. But if there's one thing I truly thank her for, it's this. She showed me that the greatest strength isn't in striking back with anger. It's in standing tall, letting the truth do the work. I used to think revenge meant making someone feel the same pain they caused me. But now I know. True revenge is realizing you no longer need it. Life never asked what I wanted. It simply revealed who I really was when everything fell apart. Sienna walked away, taking the past with her, but she left behind something far more valuable, the ability to stand still in the storm. Sometimes, victory isn't loud. It's the quiet moment when you step out of the building that once held your battles, breathe in the morning air, and realize your heart is calm. No anger, no bitterness, only clarity. I've learned that sometimes silence is the strongest voice of all, and calm, when you can hold on to it to the very end, is the highest form of power. I'm not trying to rebuild what's lost. I'm just choosing to redesign who I am. If you've ever been broken but still chose to rebuild, this story is for you. Because life will test your silence more than your strength, and sometimes walking away quietly is the loudest victory of all. Remember, revenge doesn't always come through fire and fury. Sometimes it arrives in calm, steady footsteps, and in the peace you find when you finally stop looking back. So, if you've made it this far, take a deep breath and design your next chapter with strength, with clarity, and with grace.